let's see, I'm going to be gone for about a month, so I'm going to need maybe 4 pair of breeches, 2 pair of socks. Oh, look! My dress uniform from the night watch. I suppose I could wear this. Nah, I don't think they'd want me to wear red to this wedding. Oh, greetings, my friends! Welcome back to Stark Raving. I'm your host, Lord Stark. I'm just getting packed up for the big wedding in 2 weeks. But I suppose I've time to take a break. The Ravens are in with the latest gossip, and I call this episode of events The Bear and the Maiden Fair. Let's start with Robb Stark.
Robb's family is delayed by rain. Catelyn is afraid Lord Frey will take the delay as an insult. Later, after Robb and Talisa make love, she writes to her mother.
I know she'd love to meet you. And her grandchild.
Oh, that's wonderful news. I'm sure Robb and Talisa are going to have a long and happy life together without a hint of irony. I've heard that the Red Witch Melisandre was seen leaving King's Landing. Let's check in with her.
Melisandre sails with Gendry through Blackwater Bay. She asks if he ever wondered who his father is.
I'm just a bastard.
The bastard of Robert of the House Baratheon.
She promises him there is power in his blood.
The only thing in my blood is a little too much cholesterol. We do love our cheeses in the Night's Watch. Let's check in with the Khaleesi.
Dany and her army come through the city of Yunkai. Jorah warns that the city is well provisioned and a siege would be too costly to her army. But when Dany learns there are 200,000 slaves in the city, she's resolute. She sends Grey Worm to invite the city's ruler to meet with her. A small caravan arrives at the camp. The city spokesman is intimidated by her dragons, but tries to warn her away from taking their city. He offers her a bribe, but she won't have it.
You will release every slave in Yunkai. Reject this gift, and I shall show you no mercy.
He threatens to make her a slave, but the dragons scare him off. She sends Jorah to find out about the Yunkai's allies.
Whenever anyone tried to intimidate us in the Night's Watch, Lord Mormont would feed his ravens in front of them. It wasn't exactly intimidating, but good lord, the smell. We go now to King's Landing. I still say Mormont was a loony.
Sansa is miserable as Lady Marjorie tries to comfort her. She points out that Tyrion will treat her kindly, and someday any son Sansa might have will inherit not only the Lannister homelands, but become ruler of the North. The idea of sleeping with Tyrion further upsets Sansa, but Marjorie points out that at least he's experienced with women. Bronn and Tyrion also discuss the upcoming marriage. While Bronn sees Sansa as a prize, Tyrion is put off by her youth and the effect it will have on Shae. Bronn says he can keep Shae, but he'll have to get Sansa pregnant, and then he can rule the North in their child's name. Tyrion tries to make a present of gold chains to Shae, but the gesture is lost on her. She sees her own future in doubt, even though Tyrion promises to take care of her and any children they might have. She's resolute. She is now and will always be just his whore. Lord Tywin stands before Joffrey. Joffrey is upset that Tywin has moved the small council to his personal chambers.
So if I wanted to attend a council meeting, I would now have to climb all the stairs in the Tower of the Hand?
We could arrange to have you carried.
He surprises Tywin by telling him that he knows about Daenerys and her dragons. Tywin doesn't consider them a threat, but promises to keep Joffrey in the loop, when necessary.
Oh, there was no kingly bitch slaps! I mean, I really could use some footage of Joffrey getting slapped around. It would really help me out personally. Still, speaking of icing relationships, let's check in on Jon Snow and Ygritte.
Marching south, Ygritte and Jon discuss the finer points of warfare, such as banner holding and drum beating, as perpetrated by those south of the Wall. Jon and Orell confront each other, and Orell says Ygritte understands that you can only love someone when he doesn't hold you back, and that's why Jon will eventually lose her. Orell stops Ygritte, and she's surprised to find out that he's interested in her. He promises her Jon will not make her happy. Ygritte sees her first building, a windmill.
Oh, they must have been great builders stacking stones so high.
She speaks of the wildlings taking back their land, but Jon tries to explain they'll fail. There have been 6 wildling invasions, and they've all failed. Ygritte reminds him that they are a couple now, and if she fails, so does he.
It is well known that wildlings have a bizarre sense of honor when it comes to their relationships. Speaking of which, let's check in with Team Bronn and his wildling nanny, Asha.
Asha is upset that she's stuck working as the Reeds continue to talk to Bran. She confronts them and Jojen says he's trying to explain to Bran what he's becoming. Asha simply wants to get them to Castle Black and Jon Snow, but Jojen tells him they're going to find the Raven beyond the wall. Bran believes this might be his destiny. Asha, however, won't return to the far north. She tells them the tale of how her husband went missing and came back an undead monster. He tried to kill her, and she barely escaped with her life by burning down their hut.
And since then, Asha's seen her friends murdered by the Starks, been imprisoned by them, been forced to be Bran's nursemaid, and worst of all, had to sleep with Theon Greyjoy. Poor girl. Speaking of Theon...
Theon is released from his rack by two beautiful women. They give him water and slowly try to arouse him despite his pleas for help. Things start to get hot and heavy when suddenly his captor arrives blowing a horn. Theon tries to get away but is knocked down. Guards hold him down and his captor castrates him.
Well, you did the impossible. I feel sorry for Theon. He's an arrogant, double-crossing, child-murdering bastard, but yes, chop off his dick and I feel sorry for him. Pity for Theon. I feel so unclean. Let's find out what Arya's been up to.
Arya is still upset at the Brotherhood for selling Gendry.
The Red God is the one true God.
He's not my one true God.
No? Who's yours?
Death.
You remember when Arya was just a cute little girl who wanted to learn how to sword fight? Yeah, me neither. Scares the hell out of me right now. Oof.
Scouts reported the Lannisters moving to the south. The Brotherhood suits up. Arya desperately reminds them they promised to deliver her home. When Beric tries to delay that request, she calls them hypocrites and runs away. As the Brotherhood begins to search for her, out of nowhere, the Hound grabs Arya.
That's strange. The Hound is freelance right now, so why take Arya? I mean, I just think it's strange that the Hound should play fetch for no master. I've got to start hiring writers. Finally, let's see what's happening with Jaime Lannister.
Jaime visits Brienne. He knows he owes her his life, but all she wants is for him to keep his word and return the Stark girls to Catelyn. Lord Bolton sees him off.
Tell Robb Stark I'm sorry I couldn't make his uncle's wedding. The Lannisters send her regards.
Ex-Maester Qyburn sees to Jaime's healing stump. They discuss the reason he lost his chains, and Qyburn admits to having experimented on the living, all to ascertain what diseases were doing to their bodies. Jaime finds out that his earlier lie to Locke about Brienne's father owning sapphires has caused her ransom offer to be rejected. Jaime forces them back to Harrenhal to find Locke has thrown Brienne into a pit with a bear. Jaime tries to buy her ransom, but Locke won't have it.
Oh my god, that bear's gonna tear her to pieces! Ron, what do we do?
We go into the bear pit.
Bear bites! Hit him in the uvula!
Jaime jumps in to distract the bear, which, a moment later, is hit by an arrow from his escort. He helps Brienne out of the pit and manages to climb up the pit before being pulled out. Locke finally backs down, allowing Brienne and Jaime to leave for King's Landing.
Forcing a lone woman with only a wooden sword to fight a ferocious bear? I never did like the Boltons, but at least they can't sink any lower. So what did I think of these events? Let's take a closer look.
Can I just say that I am so sick of Egret's Jon Snow impersonation? Every time he shows off a bit of knowledge, she resorts to making fun of him. How did Jon fall for her? I mean, she's beautiful, but she might also be the most annoying person on the show. The one part I did like was her being amazed at a windmill. The idea that something so bland to the rest of us would be so impressive to someone who's never seen buildings before really rang true. As for the rest of the wildlings, they're all just broad stereotypes. Tormund is played as a crass big brother to Jon, and Orell is the jealous rival, sulking because nobody likes him. The only other wildling worth knowing is Asha, and thank goodness we finally get some much-needed backstory for her. We've known the wildlings were heading south to escape the White Walkers, but to hear her take on that story makes it all the more frightening. Unfortunately, the rest of the group continues to meander in the wilderness. The bits with Robb's group were also rushed, and frankly that's a shame, because we continue to fail on getting to know Edmure and Blackfish, whom I think are worth getting to know. The announcement of Talisa's pregnancy allowed for a tender moment between Robb and his wife, something that's been lost as Robb continues to bear the burden of King of the North. The pregnancy and new characters are symptomatic of this season's problem. Too little story and too many characters. If they held back a character or two from every episode, Then when they finally did appear, it might have more impact. For instance, Melisandre and Gendry's appearance could easily have been included on last week's episode. Here it's just an all too brief visitation with these characters, and it fails to make you care about what's going on. Likewise, Joffrey and Tywin finally butt heads, and not much comes of it. By moving these scenes forward or backwards to be added onto other brief scenes, the characters would have more of an impact on the episodes in which they did appear. Dany's scene was also good, but dry. Her feeding her babies as a means of intimidation was a nice touch, and her decision to liberate Yunkai reinforces her good moral characters, but it is still just a lot of dialogue and polite threats. I did like how they contrasted Margaery and Sansa with Tywin and Bronn, how both friends tried to put a good spin on the marriage to the betrothed. Shae and Tyrion's moment together felt a little too harsh, but then the scene was meant to be uncomfortable, so I supposed it worked. We know that Tyrion has been bullied into this marriage by his father, but from Shae's point of view, Tyrion is basically telling her he loves her, but won't marry her, which is a hard pill to swallow. She can never be anything but his mistress in a society that he won't leave behind. As for Theon, with this castration, his torture has reached its peak. What's left for his captor to do to him? There's nowhere left for this story to go except death or out of the dungeon. Arya's bitterness over Gendry's betrayal leads to the best line of the show. Death is her god. I enjoyed her calling the Brotherhood out on their hypocrisy. The kidnapping at the end was necessary to get her onto the next part of her journey, but I'd prefer they'd given it its own scene instead of tacking it onto the end of the scene with the Brotherhood. Finally, Jaime going back for Brienne shows a major turn in the character. He's finally learned to care enough for someone besides himself to put them before his own needs. Although whether he's motivated by guilt or actual friendship, I still couldn't say.
So upon closer reflection, I realized that this story was a little better than I thought the first time around. Things happened. They may not have advanced the plot very much, but in almost every case, they advanced the characters. Still, I could have used a little more excitement. I give the bear and the maiden fair
Do you have running?
2 kingly bitch slaps out of 5. Today's question about life in Westeros comes to us from critic_critic. He writes, I think we need a Stark Raving top 10. Maybe the top 10 best characters in Game of Thrones. Or the top 10 reasons to join the Night's Watch. Or the top 10 pieces of real estate in Westeros. Would you consider doing a quick top 10 list? No. If you have a question about life in Westeros, leave it in the comments section below. I'll pick one to read and answer on next week's show. It just might not be the answer you like. Until then, I am Lord Stark, and this is Stark Raving!